You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Hey listeners, great timing on this episode. So we recorded it before Georgie Purcell posted this week, and I know that's been going around social media and getting a lot of attention. If you didn't get to see it, she specifically mentioned targeting native forests, jumps racing, bow hunting, winter lambing, pig protection, regional animal shelter services, and greyhounds. In particular, you've probably seen the bow hunting ones that she's been putting out there with videos where kangaroos, galahs, etc. have been shot with field tips. Now, the images aren't very convincing. That's the first thing I'd like to say. Secondly, is that this kind of behaviour, if it is true, it's not supported by legal, ethical, and humane hunters, as my guest tonight puts it. Honestly, the images don't look real to me, but if they are, I do condemn those actions, and so should the hunting fraternity. Anyways, that's my thought on the recent events coming from Georgie, and this episode really touches on a lot of things in regards to the future of hunting. So we have Luke from Brackenwear, and he's kindly offered a 15% discount on Brackenwear clothing. So if you are interested, check out his site. All you have to do is add OzHunt15, that's OZHUNT 15 at checkout. All right, guys, let's get into it. This one's been a long one in the making. We were supposed to catch up at Christmas, but that didn't pan out. So we're now in August, so it's been a little bit. But tonight I've got Luke on. Bit tricky to introduce you here because there's so many titles. So I'll have your best crack here. It's Luke. All right, Hunting Republic podcast, the maker of, I've just had a mind blank.
Brackenwear.
What an idiot. Maker of Brackenwear and also Bow Hunters of Australia. You are the admin of that, and you've had that going for a bloody long time. So we are just, you've done a lot. You've been in the industry a long damn time. Mate, really appreciate you coming on. I've been excited for this one because I know we generally have some pretty good chats off air, so I'm looking forward to this one on air.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, let's look, I'm sure people probably have heard of you. You are more in the bow hunting scene. So can we just get a bit of your background before we get into whatever we're going to chat about tonight? But just so people know a bit of your background and more about you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I suppose my hunting background is that I was kind of born into it. My father was a bow hunter before I was born. He started that in the mid-70s, started bow hunting, and he and his next door neighbour, a guy by the name of Johnny Gage, I think it was, up in Mount Isa in the 70s, actually started the Mount Isa Bow Hunters Club. It's an ABA club, which is still running today. And so I came along. I'm a 79 model, and some of my very earliest memories are actually the smell of Port Orford cedar arrows, Fletch-tight glue, and paint. Believe it or not, sniffing glue and paint from a young age. And no, seriously, so even as early as maybe 2 or 3, I know very early in the 80s, I have those memories, and they're very vivid. So I kind of didn't have much of a chance to not be in hunting, around hunting, and kind of, I guess you'd say, literally have it in my blood. I didn't do a lot of hunting or whatnot when I was younger, predominantly because by the time I was sort of old enough, where we moved to, there wasn't really much game, and Dad would go away to hunt and stuff like that, and then time went on. But when I did get into it, I was into it flat out, full on in my early teens. And sort of haven't ever looked back, and haven't not had something to do with it in some form or another ever since then. But yeah, bow hunting was what I was exposed to, so it's what I grew that passion for. Having said that, Dad did have a rifle in the cupboard up until a certain Prime Minister made it too hard for him to keep it, and he just went, "Look, I'm not using it. I'm not going to bother jumping through all those hoops and doing all those things I need to do." So he moved on. So I've since also developed an interest in the rifle side of things in the last 3 or 4 years, and have sort of ventured down that path as well. What else can I tell you? So early, about around the year 2000 I was at uni and wanting to invest my time and learn a lot more about Australian game and try and educate myself as much as I could to get as much as of an advantage in the field. And I sort of figure knowledge is power, but knowledge is helpful with what we do and how we do it, because it helps us put all those pieces of the puzzle together and increase our success. Yeah, so around about then I started to try and find information about Australian bow hunting on the internet and Australian game, and I just couldn't find any. I found a lot of stuff from North America, and it was that point that I decided to start a website and forums dedicated to Australian bow hunting. And Bow Hunters Group of Australia was formed. And it was an obsession and a compulsion for a very long time. And at the point where life changes sort of needed me to step away from it, we were cracking on with 10 million odd hits a month on the forums. And it was very, very full on. It was a pinnacle internet presence as far as bow hunting was concerned. We had the most members, the most representation, the most traffic, and it was prior social media, and it was pretty full on, and it was something that I took very seriously, but I also took it on board with my position has always been that I'm in it for the sport, not for the money or not for anything else. So I was always invested in it to better the sport and to help educate other hunters and to help increase participation and those sorts of things. And that's kind of been a massive drive for me. I'm always trying to help people, be that mates who are, maybe a bit interested in it and getting them gear and getting them into it and taking them out hunting, or other guys that just reach out to me for bits and pieces here and there and ask about, this or that or whatever. I'll always, forever and a day, bend over backwards to try and help people out, which, as we're chatting with off air, is, I guess, part of my nature, in that I was a teacher for 10 years and now I'm a professional firefighter of over a decade as well. So that's always been a drive for me in the sport. Is that enough waffle?
Yeah, mate. No, it's good. It's good. It's easy to talk to podcasters, I always find, because, we do like to talk, so it makes it easy. But so obviously you have a good pedigree coming into the sport, and then you've got the passion as well for it.
Yep.
And one of the things I think we get on well for is the advocacy side.
For sure.
And we've had a lot of discussions, again, off air, about advocating for hunters. And we are, as a group, as a collective, we're our own worst enemy.
Absolutely.
And the divisiveness amongst hunters, and I don't know the answer. I don't know how this changes. It's a very eye-opening thing, because obviously I have not been in hunting anywhere near as long as you have, but it's so evident when you first get into it. And one of the things I found in a couple of the hunting clubs and things that I went in, it was people wanting to use you. And if you had no value, or you didn't have access to property, or you didn't want to pay for them to make money, you were worthless.
Yep.
Or you were just cast aside. And I didn't like that side of it. And so that caused me to leave some hunting clubs and whatnot. That's starting to change in different hunting clubs. I'm finding that there's some better people out there, but it's an interesting one for me. I'm a pretty stubborn person, thank God, because I really feel if I wasn't as stubborn, I probably would have got straight out.
Geez, mate, we definitely don't have that in common. Not. Yeah, it frustrates me no end, and literally as you're speaking, then I was trying to sort of put together, I guess you'd say, parallel examples, and what I thought was that, in what world do you think you would ever see two vegans at each other's throats? You just wouldn't.
Nope.
They would, or two animal rights advocates, or that sort of thing. You just wouldn't. They will be, and they will wholly have each other's backs to support and push forward the cause that they're united about. but that just isn't hunters. And unfortunately, like you said, it's to our own demise. We're our own worst enemies in that case. And, as we mentioned before we started recording, I was saying how I'd listened to a few of your episodes today while I was in the car for about 7 hours. And, you repeatedly have said, I will support, hunters being hunters. You do you as long as it's legal. And I always say legal, ethical, and humane.
Yep.
But we just don't do that. We don't do it well, to the point where, we argue on social media about the dumbest stuff, when we should put those things aside, realize that we shouldn't be sweating the small stuff, and we should be united to push forward for the greater cause, which is we all want to be doing this for a very long time, and we want to be doing it as hassle-free as possible, with as little restrictions as possible, and certainly, ideally, with as little fees for permits and all that sort of other crap that comes with it. But we also want to make sure that our kids and our grandkids are able to do it. And, I pin that back to something that, I think it was only a little 12 months ago that I read that Ben Selleris wrote. And it was basically outlining the fact that, he may not be an Indigenous Australian that can point to something as his, culture of 20,000 years, but he has his own culture that he can trace back to, even though now it's, from a European country, that is his hunting heritage, that is his cultural heritage. And that is something that, that really resonated with me strongly, and in my own ancestry and the cultural hunting heritage that exists within that as well. And I want my kids and my grandkids and my, offspring down the line to be able to point back and go, this is what my great-grandfather did, and this is my cultural heritage, and they can still do it. And we just seem to want to not focus on that and bother with arguing about other crap, be that what we hunt, how we hunt, where we hunt, when we hunt. And we just do it really poorly.
Do you think it's, look, I think it's such a multifaceted issue, because I think it really comes down to a few key things. I think hunters are very protective of their patch, and I see that all the time with, different posts, and I understand it because I know how hard it is to get private access. Absolutely. So I understand people getting it that don't want to lose it.
Yep.
I get it. Then the trophy side of it, that people want to, I don't know how to word this. For me, the trophy side of it, for me anyway, if I get into that side, because that's not my primary objective, and I've got no issue with anyone that is.
Yep.
But for me, if I'm looking at trophies, it's trying to just get a better trophy than me. But I see a lot of people that don't have that same value.
Yep.
And it's, I want to beat somebody else. And that then adds another layer to it.
Sure.
Because that is an environment where we're not, I think the analogy is a rising tide raises all ships.
Correct.
And I feel that that's not the case, because not everyone like this. And I want to make that clear. Again, we're talking in general and stereotyping some and others, and there's always good and bad on both sides.
Yep.
And I feel that is an element that adds to it.
Yep.
Then I feel it is a very segregated community in the sense of how people hunt, whether it's bow, public land, private land, with dogs, without dogs, rifle, caliber. There's all these different things for it. And then almost another element is the current trend in society of this cancel culture.
Yeah.
So you've got all these sort of pressures, external pressures pushed in on the hunting sphere, and that's causing major problems. And it's super interesting. I'm talking to a bloke, he's just made a product that is about absorbing shock for shooters. So people that are, a bit recoil sensitive or want to shoot those bigger calibers and not feel it the next day.
Sure.
I think it's a really good idea. It's really interesting to see the comments putting him down.
Yeah.
About if they can't handle the bigger calibers, they shouldn't do it. And it's like, all right, well, okay, that's your opinion. Like, but why? I'm sure there's something in your vicinity that you do that has an element of reducing risk or safety or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Isn't that a smart thing? And I see it with a vast array of things.
Yep.
And I just sit there and go, okay, so we have an issue with wearing, this or a limb saver or whatever it is, muzzle brake, because someone might enjoy shooting more. Isn't that a positive? But no, we're not going to look at it like that. We're going to look at it and go, well, they shouldn't handle it. They can't handle it. They're not right for that. So what, you want them out? And then the numbers dwindle. And then we're in this place we are now where you guys up there, you're obviously from Queensland, no public land. South Australia, bow hunting ban.
Yep.
Western Australia, caliber ban.
Yep.
Duck hunting is getting restricted and restricted more. Mm-hmm. Victoria is looking at now banning lead ammunition. It goes on and on and on. And you're right. We just don't come together. And it's like this little infighting and power struggles. It's crazy.
And I've said this before a number of times where, and I really should look up the quote, but it was reference to the Holocaust, and about in the end, and they came for me, and there was no one to help me. But it's that quote that says, at first they came for such and such, and that wasn't me, so I didn't bother to speak up for them. And then they came for such and such, and that wasn't me, so I didn't speak up for them. And then they came for such and such, and that wasn't me, so I didn't speak up for them. But then they came for me, and there's no one left to speak up for me. And that's the way that a lot of people sit there and look at these things. Like, I'm from Queensland, and all the stuff in South Australia doesn't affect me, so who cares? I'm a bow hunter in Queensland, it doesn't matter. Well, I'm a rifle shooter in Victoria. What's it going to matter what calibers they take away from WA? And that's unfortunately the mindset that we need to try and have people understand, that it does matter, because we need to be all supporting all efforts to do all things that are legal, humane and ethical within the realms of hunting in Australia, because it doesn't matter whether you're hunting with hounds for deer, you're hunting with dogs for pig, you're hunting with traditional archery gear, high-tech archery gear, you're hunting with large caliber, you're hunting with spears, or you're fishing, or you're spear fishing, or whatever it is, you are on the radar of the people who don't want you to do it. And unless we help those people who are the acute focus right now, for example, that because it's close to my heart, I suppose, the South Australian bow hunting ban, what's left by the time they turn around, they focus on me in Queensland as a bow hunter. It's just something we do really, really, really badly.
Yeah, and I don't really understand how we rectify this, because everyone, as I said, has their little patch, and they're only really concerned with their patch. And look, a really good example for me at the moment is there's a petition going around New South Wales, and you've got to be a New South Wales resident to fill it in.
Yep.
To have a conversation or a debate in Parliament about unlocking national parks.
Yep.
And this isn't just for hunters. This is not being raised for just hunters. It's being raised in general to stop locking more and more down as national park and stopping the access. And the signatures are just not even there.
Mm.
And that concerns me greater than just hunting, because that's for four drivers, for campers, for outdoors people. And it's not getting the traction. So the politicians, why are they going to be interested in doing anything?
Yeah.
And it's not like people are asking for money. It literally takes 10 seconds of your time.
Yep.
And it really is not getting traction. And I really can't understand why the hell not, because it can only be a positive. Because I talk about it all the time, especially with politicians. It's a game of numbers and a game where they want to be re-elected because that's their job. And if we're not united, banded, vocal, we have a big problem here. And we're seeing that across the country. We're seeing that, not just our country, let's be honest, we're seeing that across the world at the moment.
Yep.
You know, I look at what's going over there. I look at what's going on over there in Canada. And I'll tell you what, geez, I'm glad I'm not from there. And I'm not putting anyone from Canada down, but I see these caliber restrictions and firearms restrictions, and it makes me nervous going, why would you want to go out into the wilderness when you've got bears, but you can't protect yourself? Like, what the hell is going on there? It has to be decisions being made by people that don't go into the bush. That's for sure.
Yeah, it seems to be, for whatever reason, that within our society, people who are against stuff are more prepared to stand up and make more noise together than people who are for stuff, if that makes sense. You know, these people who have this be it I don't know, they despise whatever it is that they're against, that you know, be them, you know, in this case, I mean, if flat it is just people who are anti-hunting, be that for whatever the motivation is, that they seem more prepared because they're against something to do a lot more, to take a lot more action, to make a lot more noise, but to be more united and certainly more coordinated and more deliberate in what they do than the people who are just, you know, they're for whatever it is these other people are against. And obviously, yes, in this case, it's firearms and it's hunting and it's you know, access to public lands. And, you know, like you said, we don't have that, never have had in many decades, to my knowledge, in Queensland. And you try and put forward these ideas that, you know, let's look at this model from, you know, the R license system, for example, in New South Wales, and people are like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, it's eternally frustrating that you then turn around and you have these people who are screaming against what it is that exists now, and they just seem so much more prepared to attack what it is you are doing legally, humanely, and ethically. But the people like yourself, who are the ones currently doing it, just can't be bothered or are too busy fighting with each other. And I just wish people would take a hell of a lot more notice of the writing that's on the wall, the writing that, you know, I've seen coming for the 24 or 5 years that I've certainly been involved in the forums and had a bit more of an ear to the ground with the beat of the drum, so to speak. And I've been crying out for years for more public presence of the national representative bodies. And, you know, for decades it's been, oh, we're doing this, oh, we've been doing that, you know, we're talking to solicitors or we're talking with lawyers or whatever. It's like, well, okay, where's the public communication of that? Where's that public statement of your policy, of your position? Where's the public, you know, presence of your accountability as a representative body that people pay their money to be represented by, that you have a mandate to then represent them, that you have, you know, your organizational constitutions and stuff like that? Where is the actual transparency in that representation that shows you going forward and actually doing these things, that then allows people to get involved, to get passionate about, to get on board with, and not this cloak and dagger, oh, we're having talks here and we're having talk there and we can't really tell you about it. Well, that's not how the opposition works. You know, the attack on hunting and the attack on firearms and everything is very public. The attack on duck hunting is very public. But it seems these people who are supposed to represent us and defend us, supposedly they're defending us, but where's the representation that we are supposed to see? And forever and a day, you know, I've been very vocal about it, going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Tell us. You know, in certain instances where I've been members of these associations going, what are you doing? Where is that being posted out for your public membership to see, and then to get passionate about, to get on board with, and to, you know, be then helped to be united to go forward and form that front and jump on board and be bolstered in their defense of what it is they're doing by the actions that the so-called leadership is supposed to be taking. And it just seems that forever and a day, certainly for the last number of decades I've been involved, it's just not there.
A lot there.
Yep.
So that's great. I've got a couple of opinions on that. I think the media side of the hunting community is really poor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think personally it's for a couple of reasons. is there's a lot of people that don't understand hunting. So the posting of photos and portraying it is a very difficult thing to make palatable for people that are non-hunters.
Absolutely.
So from a media standpoint, I understand why there probably isn't the big media push that you see from the other side, other industries, other hobbies, because it's very, very different. So that creates its own issue for them to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether it's just a marketing thing that maybe we don't have great marketing people in the right positions, which I don't know if that can be one of the reasons we use, because there's a lot of people from vast industries in hunting. So that could be one of the reasons. I also feel that there's some really great people doing great work for different things, but they're not all united. Mm-hmm. So they're all got their own little patch, as we keep saying, or their own little sort of interest. So that causes more problems because you're not attacking things as a collective, as you were talking and mentioning that the other side are all, in step together.
And what, sorry to interrupt, but straight to the point, what drives that, do you think? You know what I mean? Each of these representative bodies, they've got their own little patch, but in the big scheme of things, aren't working together.
I think it's power.
Power. It's ego and it's power.
Ego. Yeah. That's my personal opinion. I don't know a lot of these people in those positions, but from everything I've seen so far, that's what I feel it is. Nobody wants to give credit to somebody else. Mm-hmm. They want to keep the wins. And it's almost like we have our own little political atmosphere in, we've got people fighting and doing what the politicians do in our own little community. And that becomes a problem because people want to do it for the glory, or they want to do it for their own self-interest. I've seen a lot of that. Yep. That's a big one, is a lot of self-interest. And it's one of the things that I'm mindful of. And I loved what you said before. You're not in this for money. You're in this for what we do. And that's where I'm at too. And that's why I'm here where I am. So that I get. And I think that is one of the issues, is that some of the people in positions may not be necessarily the best people because they're about the power, the access, what is in it for them and what is in it for them from both a hunting perspective and glory perspective, maybe. I also think people's hunters' views are very different. And when you spoke about the vegan attitude viewpoint is the same, that's where ours gets a little bit trickier, because you have, and I've had the comments that, bow hunting is a lot harder than rifle hunting. Agreed. I'm not disputing that, but I don't view it as from an ego thing for me. Yep. So I love both. I am not good at either, but I'm definitely not very good at bow hunting, because that is definitely a far harder skill in my opinion. And then you have people with the public and private viewpoints. Then you have people that use dogs, indicating dogs or not. Then the thermal, look at the thermal debate that's going on. So, there's all these different aspects where people have some sort of attachment or justification for their viewpoint. And that's human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that at all. The problem is because of those things, and because we have such diversity in hunting, that then becomes another point to segregate. So again, it's so layered that you've got that. You've got the people in power. You've got the different groups that want to fight and achieve for their group because they want to keep their role or their status or the glory for their group. They don't really care about the other groups. That's it. So that's one.
And that's, sorry to cut you off, but that's where, like you said before, a rising tide lifts all ships or whatever. I've said for years, if we all work together to make the pizza bigger, we all get a bigger piece anyway. That's been my analogy for years. Like, let's all work together to make this pizza bigger, boys, because it doesn't matter. Your piece will be bigger, my piece will be bigger, everybody's piece will be bigger if we're working to make the pizza a bigger bloody thing overall.
Do you think people want that though? So this is what I toy with sometimes. And I love to think while I drive and just look at things from different viewpoints and try and figure stuff out. And sometimes I think, do hunters want that? Do hunters really want hunting to grow? Because that's a threat to them and them hunting. And if I get more hunters, that means more people are going to be out there. I'm competing with more people. Someone might take my access. There's that side of it. I don't know. It's just one I was toying with the other day, thinking about, do people really want to help people? Some do, most definitely. There's some great examples of that. I think the ADA do a really good job down here of that. People like the Sydney president, Rick Bishop, he has run the Samba hunting group. He's done education courses. I think he's a very, very good advocate for that. And it's not something that he's doing to make money. He's doing it because it's something he loves and he wants to promote it. I love that. That's the people I want leading from the front. Then there's other sides that, again, I'll go back to one of the clubs I was involved in, that the people on the committee were about them and access for them. And I want to be in the committee because I might get to talk to a property owner because they contact the hunting club to get access. I want that. I want to be able to talk to people and have you got access to property? Oh, come into the inner circle, otherwise get out.
Yeah.
There's more. I'm going to pretend to be a good person to greater benefit myself.
Sure.
And I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah. It's interesting because as soon as you mention that and the motivations for it, and a little bit of a personal story, I suppose. I was married and had a family quite young, and my first marriage broke down. And after my wife and I, ex-wife now, split up, we were quite a typical split up couple, bickering quite often. And that went on for, a while, to the point where we literally reached a point where we just went, you know what, we've just got to be freaking grown-ups about this shit. Put that stuff aside and get on with life and living and move forward for the betterment of both our own personal lives and the torment that the bullshit was causing for us, but also for our son. And from that day forward, we've been the best mates. We're not obviously married anymore, but we literally put our grown-up pants on and we moved that stuff aside and we focused on what was important. And because we're able to do that and bringing it back to what we're looking at now, the greater good benefited immensely. And that was our own, personal mental health, all that sort of stuff, and our son and his mental health and his life moving forward into, adulthood. And that's the sort of stuff that hunters need to do, and the different people within the different factions for the different reasons. Be adult about it. Step out of your ego. Step aside from your hang-ups with thermal. Step aside for your hang-ups with, compound bows and whatever, and look at being an adult with regards to the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, if we don't look after each other, nobody's going to have it in 10 or 20 years' time, because it'll just be gone.
Interesting you say that. So when you talk about the thermal thing, to play devil's advocate here, it's a really conflicting one for me.
Oh, I get it, mate.
Because I hear people say that it's cheating and it's diminishing hunting in the fair chase. Well, okay. Could we not say the exact same about binoculars, spotting scopes, optics on your rifle?
Recurves versus longbows.
Exactly.
Longbows versus compounds.
100%.
I'll even roll it into other passionate pastimes of mine in photography. You go film cameras when digital first came out. That's what film photographers were saying. That's cheating. It's just come on.
This is where do you draw the line?
Exactly.
The line is moving to where people want that line to be.
And the line for me doesn't have to be the same as the line for you.
Correct. And if you don't want to hunt with thermal, is it a bad thing for people to use thermal?
No, you hunt with thermal.
Exactly right. And I've seen a heap of different points, and I like reading what people say because I like to challenge it and think about, well, what's the issue with it? And that's the big one that keeps coming back for me, is that it's diminishing fair chase. And it's like, well, unless you're out there with, a muzzle loader and iron sights, the argument could be made that you're using technology. Have you got GPS? Are you plotting your points on a GPS so you know how to go in? Are you looking at weather apps to work out what the weather's doing? Where do we draw the line and say, hey, this is starting to diminish fair chase if that's what you're going on about?
100%.
And then I saw one comment and it was like, well, if you have thermals, all the big stags will get shot. I was like, okay, but thermal's not taking away everything from hunting. It's helping maybe find them, but you still got to hunt them. And that's an element to itself. And then isn't that more of a challenge if those ones are gone and you're saying that it's a lazy option? Well, if that's the viewpoint for that you're using thermal because you're lazier, well, wouldn't that mean that those people aren't going to go as deep into the bush for those animals that you could do that and still achieve now a higher fair chase?
Exactly.
And I know there'll be people out there probably screaming at whatever they're listening through about those comments. And I don't know where I sit on it personally because, as I said, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I get the thermal is something new. But at one point, the rifle scope was something new. And at one point, the rangefinder was something new. I'm sure there is no one out there that can hand on their heart say, I do not use any form of technology or advancements to hunt, because a lot of it we have to.
Well, even to the point, like I'll cast back 20 years literally to a group hunt that we had of a bunch of guys off the forum. There was about a dozen of us, and we got together on a property down near Dubbo. And there was a couple of crazy lads that came up from Canberra, and they were traditional bow hunters. And we were just talking around camp and whatnot. And I've shot all bows over the years. And so I've always said if I had 3 feet, I'd have one in each camp, longbow recurve and compound. I just don't care. I love them all as long as it flings an arrow and even shooting bullets. I don't care. I just enjoy the process and enjoy the machinery of it. But these guys they were pretty wild lads, and we were just talking banter around the campfire one night, and we were talking about pretty much this exact topic, and compounds and longbows and sights and da da da, and one of them he goes, I'm going to go hunt with a rock tomorrow. I'm like, what are you on, champ? He's going, well, he said, realistically, even a spear is a technological advantage. He said, hell, even a rock's a technological advantage. I should be running up to goats and deer and strangling with my hands if I really want to do it, and I should be doing it buck naked. He said, they're all advantageous to man to get, one up on the animal to make it easier for me to dispatch that and become, and the victorious predator. He said, if we really, really want to break it down and we want to, wake up to ourselves and acknowledge what it is we're doing here, we should be running around buck naked, strangling these things with our bare hands.
I really like that, not the buck naked part. Let me clarify. I really like that sort of idea because it's exactly right. But that also makes us the apex predator we are.
That's right.
Because we've got the intelligence. We haven't got the senses. We haven't got the eyesight. We haven't got the smell. We haven't got the hearing that some of our prey do.
Yep.
Our advantage is our ability to think, create, make to help us.
Exactly.
And these things are along that pathway. So it's almost a journey that we keep refining our skills and getting better tech, better whatever it is, and having to use that and use that correctly. I mean, I love the saying, all the gear, no idea. And I really think that does have a place because
Absolutely.
You can have everything and you still might not be successful.
Oh, mate, I lined up on a red deer in March at 17 meters with a sighted compound and I missed.
First, sorry, I'm sitting here going, Jesus Christ, 17 meters. I don't think I could ever get into that close. But
well, that's the thing. It came into us, funnily enough. We called it in. But what I had in the heat of the moment neglected to realize when I knelt down, as per the guy I was with knelt down when this thing came screaming over the ridge at us and wanted to kill us, was 6 feet in front of me that there was a little shrub sapling, right? It was only about 3.5 feet high. And as I said to you before, I'm only 5'8", so I'm not exactly a monolithic human myself. And when you look through sights on a bow, you don't see the arrow, right? So when you've pulled back, you see the sights. And
yep.
you have an X number of inches difference between what you're looking at through your sights and where the actual arrow sits. Now, when there's stuff that's quite close to you, when you can't see that, when you're looking through your sight picture, if your arrow is going to hit that, you don't realize. So in the heat of the moment, when I've just dropped to my knee to make myself less conspicuous and drawn back at the same time, I didn't see this bush in front of me. I couldn't see it through my sight picture. And as I released, the arrows clipped it and shot off at the wrong angle.
Damn.
So all the gear, a reasonable idea, and I still got it wrong, and I put my hand up and I go, that just a stupid error that I should, after all these years, have known better. But in the heat of the moment, it just didn't come into my thought process to be careful of, because I just didn't see that damn bush in front of me.
But isn't that the beauty of hunting? That it doesn't matter.
It wasn't.
I bet you felt that way. But
I was filthy.
For me, it's funny. I always talk about this. I'm not a super successful hunter, and it doesn't really bother me because it's that process, it's that journey. There's so much more to it for me.
For sure.
And I think that's the beauty of hunting, that I have so much respect for the whole process, the animal, how we hunt, the type of hunting that we do, that it's not always going to pay off. And I think that's the biggest problem with the other side to hunting is I almost feel they're very misguided, and I think it's a lack of understanding and knowledge. Yep. I also think it's a little bit of misguided righteousness as well, thinking that the animals, we're saving them, that they're poor and defenseless. And if I had no idea about hunting and I, had a limited understanding of firearms, bows, whatever it might be, I could see the viewpoint of thinking that these poor, defenseless, helpless little Disney creatures that the big bad hunter's going after. And again, that comes down to a miseducation. And again, that probably comes back and links to this big circle that we're talking in at the moment of a lack of marketing, a lack of media presence, a lack of telling our side of the story.
Yep.
And I almost feel it's a bit late for that now, because it's less palatable to a society that doesn't know where their food comes from. So we're up against it in so many different aspects now that makes it so much harder.
Oh, 100%. So even in that the ABC article that's been getting around the last week or so, and they did the interview with the hunters there, and the comment about contracting out the kill or something along those lines. I remember being confronted by one of my wife's friends when the topic of hunting came up, and she's just going, "Oh, so you're just a murderer?" I said, "Well, hang on a sec. You're sitting there eating a ham sandwich. You're just paying someone else to do your dirty work." And they didn't really appreciate that, but that was the fact of the matter. And that's something that I find is a very powerful thought to put to someone to actually challenge their own position on it. Not necessarily in that accusatory manner, but more so, yes, I like eating meat. I like to be able to provide meat for my family. Am I super efficient at it? Hell no. If I had $1 for every cat walked in the bush and not shot something or brought home a kilo of meat, I would be a bazillionaire. But I like doing that process, and I am quite happy and prepared to do it myself rather than pay someone else to do that dirty work for me. And when people are happily omnivorous, it is a point of view that they haven't necessarily had put to them before, and you can actually see the cogs tick over, and done in the right manner. That, like I said, it's not necessarily pointing the finger and being accusatory, but it is a position that you can put to someone and have them literally an awakening moment to go, "Oh, I didn't kind of think about it that way before."
Again, it's that marketing. Like if you think about the slogans on the other side, meat is murder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what's ours?
And the picture of the lamb covered in blood, right?
Yeah. And I was watching a TikTok the other day, and some vegan fella walking around with this tiny baby lamb, and I don't know, he was carrying on about how he buys secondhand shoes that are still leather, but it's okay because the animal didn't die for his purchase because he's recycling it, which I just Yeah, there's so many elements to that. But then I sat there and said, okay, well, do you know what age a lamb dies at? Do you know what size? Like, so it was just this, all these things were just playing in my head because you could just see this bloke is so detached.
Yep.
And look, good on him. He's very passionate about what he does. Hey, whatever, each their own, as I said.
Oh, you do you, mate. Just
exactly. I have no problem. I do dislike the ones that go into the restaurants and carry on and you know, try and shame people, stand in a supermarket. Like, if you don't want to eat meat, don't eat meat. I have no qualms in that. If you want to be vegan, vegetarian, whatever, go for it. Like, you do you. But don't impact everybody else because you don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's the big thing at the moment. People want to make political sort of statements or, you know, really be this outrageous. And I think that comes back to this popularity contest that people want to be, they want to be famous. People want to be celebrities. And, you know, I talk about that because I don't really have a massive social presence. I don't want to. Like, I've said it before, my Facebook is for people I sort of know. I don't really accept people on Facebook that I don't know. Like, if they listen to the podcast, I've got the other podcast one for that. That one's my personal one. I don't want to be famous.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not doing that for this. Like, this isn't what it's about. So these other people, I feel that that's what they're trying to do, though. They're trying to get famous, or their 5 minutes in the spotlight for whatever they're trying to do. And I think that has made people more outlandish in what they're doing. And instead of just worrying about their own actions and what they're doing, they're really trying to push their way on other people to make them do it, which is a very, very interesting one for me. And you touched on, when you were talking about that, you know, your ex-partner, ex-wife, and the bickering side of the model. It's almost like hunting has just a heap of different ex-wives. We've got the vegan ex-wife. We've got the different type of hunting ex-wife. We've got, you know what I mean? It's a very interesting side of it, and I see a lot of bickering. And you know, we were talking about that prior. That story you were saying, I do vaguely remember that. Do you want to talk about that?
Which story was that, mate?
The one with the polar bear.
Yeah. So it was going back a few months now ago again, and that the deer story that I just told you, the guy there, he was guiding me, and it was this particular instance occurred to him where he's a Canadian bloke, and mate, I haven't met many better humans, to be honest. Just a absolute top bloke. First time I met him through Scotty, and we went for a week's deer hunt during the Raw, which was really obscure this year. Pissed down all week on us. Was just a horrible, horrible week. The deer were just not behaving, not playing the game, and it was just really, really hard hunting. But mate, just a really top bloke. And so he's gone back to Canada, where he's from, and he went on a polar bear hunt. Now, he has saved up for many years to be able to afford it because it's extremely expensive. And the hunt and everything about it was as per the requirements for where he did it. So what he was using to hunt it, where he was hunting it, when he was hunting it, who he was hunting it with, everything was legal, ethical, and humane. And as I was saying, he uses arrows from Widowmaker Arrows, which is owned by Mick Baker up in North Queensland. And he's had a successful polar bear hunt of an animal. Now, again, I don't know the exact specifics, but my understanding is that there's extremely limited number of permits that are issued each year, or tags, and they're typically for either animals that have been highlighted as old or whatever and need sort of culling for herd protection improvement and that sort of thing, or they're problematic animals. Again, I don't know this specific exact details, but like I said, I do know what he was doing was everything above board where he was allowed to do it. So he sent some photos to Mick, and Mick's published them on socials. And, mate, the crap that he copped, it was just so and like you said, I'm a passionate bloke about this stuff, and it was really horrible to see, and almost, like me, it's like gut wrenching to see that this bloke who spends half his year out here away from his family, he's married to an Aussie girl, but spends half of his life out of his year out here doing red deer hunts, buffalo hunts, and that sort of stuff. So he is here helping with our own hunting, I suppose, scene, and doing what he does passionately. He goes there, he does everything he's allowed to do. He does it very well, he does it very ethically, does it very humanely. And people from here who are ignorant to accepting that is culturally, ethically, humanely, legally all above board, rather than embrace a hunter for achieving a lifetime goal, and rather than understand that this actually helps place a value on a very limited number of those animals, of which every cent and all of the meat goes back to the Inuits. They just slaughtered him. And the comments and the vitriol that was thrown his way was just horrific. And I'm just going, guys, it's just highlighting the issue. It's highlighting the problem. It's highlighting the fact that, and it guts me to say it, but like I said before, in 10, 20 years' time, I just can't see us being able to exist because we just are too busy backstabbing and too busy fighting with the ex instead of just putting our adult pants on and getting over that shit and focusing on the fact that we have to move forward as one, irrespective of the particular chosen hunting pastime you have, from the fact of a trout fisher to a spear fisher to a longbow hunter to a recurve hunter to a thermal shooter to an open sights lead ball musket shooter. It doesn't matter, because if we don't, we're stuffed. And I just can't, like I said, 25 plus years in the realm of the greater interwebs and the experience and exposure to it that I've had, I just can't see it getting better.
Okay. I think a couple of things there. The scroll on effect, I call it. For some reason, society really has an issue with scrolling on.
Yep.
If there's something you don't like, just scroll on. Instead, we want to fight, argue, etc.
Yep.
That is a very, very big thing. Yeah, I don't know how that gets rectified. It's one of the curses of social media, I feel. Especially, it's the argument that, is that a good look for hunters? And so let's focus just on that, the polar bear.
Sure.
So is that a good look to post it out on a open forum that everybody gets to see, where it's not palatable to the public? There's not the context, there's not the information, etc., etc. Probably not. However, in a closed forum that is supposed to be predominantly hunters that are accepting of hunting,
which is what
that should be fine. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. That should be fine. I don't understand why, if it's not your cup of tea, as long as it's legal, and I like what you say, ethical and humane, that there should not be an issue, whether you do it or not. Okay, why are you so upset about someone doing it? I get the side where people sometimes say you've put up a really terrible photo if aunties get a hold of it, et cetera, et cetera.
100%.
And I agree with that. I think that we need to be more mindful of our image to the public, because that is who are going to assist in the future of hunting, not hunters. Well, a little bit of hunters. We need hunters to step up and do something, but the general public and the mass numbers are going to be, whether it dies or it is acceptable or tolerated, whatever you want to say about it. And I feel it's more the tolerated part rather than ever being an accepted thing. And that's just because I think people are so disconnected. Again, I liked what you said before when you're talking about Ben Solaris and saying his culture is hunting. A lot of people don't understand that. So get all that. So it's the scroll-on approach. That's the first one there.
Yeah, for sure.
The next one I feel we do a really poor job of is, you hear the slogan, trust the science. And the science of herd management, of animals being or species being saved because of hunting, the genetic improvements due to hunting, removal of older animals. I really feel there could be so much more work done in that space to make it more clearer to the public.
For sure. Did you, I'm just going to go completely to the side for 1 second. Did you happen to see the little comic that I posted this morning on the Hunting Republic Instagram page?
Mate, I didn't. When you were talking off air, when you were saying, did you see this that I posted? Did I see this?
No, it's all good.
Mate,
it's all good.
The algorithms, I have not seen anything from you for a damn long time.
That's right.
And I don't understand. I was talking to a lot of people about this the other day, saying I just don't see anything from a lot of people.
Unless you click on it and then you get a week's worth of it. You don't.
Exactly. So unless I've seen something and clicked on it, and I am really not a massive social media person. I try and keep across it, but I also try and get my distance as well. So unfortunately, no, I haven't. So
it's all good.
Yeah, so full transparency.
No. It was a comic. I can't even remember, actually. Sappy Days, I think, is the comic who came up with it. But it's a picture of a couple of bison. So there's an adult bison standing, pointing to the right. There's a calf behind it. And in the distance behind the calf, there's two wolves running down the hill. And the calf says, "Oh no, Dad, wolves, what are we going to do?" And the dad says, "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to run 40 miles per hour in that direction and have many more children." And the caption is nature in a nutshell.
I'm looking at it now, so which is good. I'll probably see more of your stuff for the next week.
But I mean,
100%.
That's that. The nature versus the hunter. So you're talking, as you're saying before, the science-based approach and the science. Trust the science. If you break it even down to more basic terms of humanity, I go and shoot. And I like my best pig I shot on Cape York, just short of 30 Douglas points. This thing was a bag of bones. Like, wouldn't have weighed 40 kilo, maybe 45, right? Just an absolute bag of bones, near 30 Douglas points in ivory, which is near record class for a boar. I did him a favour. He was shot. Like, and I don't mean that, no pun intended. Like, he was cactus. He was definitely well past his prime. He was a crook animal. You could tell by just the fact that you could see his pelvis, like he's just a bag of bones. I shot him. He stood up in his bed. I shot him from 31 meters under a log. He stood up in his bed, spun around, fell down dead, took the top of his heart clean out. Now, that is the absolute epitome of humanity when it comes to shooting with a bow and arrow. The alternative is he starves, he dies of disease, cancer, whatever, or he gets ripped to pieces by predators, be that other pigs, boars that rip into pieces, and then he bleeds and then the dingoes get him and he's gone within, however. Now, you turn around and you go, let's look at that science of herd management and trust the science. Not only are we increasing the value on those animals, and by putting a value on something, hunters who are half-educated will know that if you invest in the survival of that herd, you have hunting forever to come. If you are not educated, then you will wipe them out and you've got nothing left to hunt, and that's just sheer stupidity. But within that, as you touched on, you're increasing in your genetics and numbers and all those things that benefit the species. Now, in some instances in Australia, obviously we have pest and feral animals that are allowed to hunt, so it's a slightly different conversation. But when you start talking about the basic humanity of that process, and that basic humanity is in the case where you are selecting, the 7 stag, then he is going to be the older stag. He is going to have lived the longest life. He will be on his way out in the not too distant future, and younger stags take his place. The reality is you've shot him cleanly, humanely. He has died, but in a sense that is far less painful and far less suffering than nature would otherwise inflict on that animal. Yet you turn around and try and portray that oh no, nature's fine. Nature should be left to take its course. Hunting is cruel. You know, I mean, it's such an, and I literally under that caption, I don't know if you read what I actually put with that post. I said the anti-hunter's oxymoron. Nature's a bitch. It's a very cruel-hearted bitch. And when you offset that with a clean, humane bullet or arrow, there is no comparison. You know, how would I want to go out? Do I want to go out in the same way that an old stag or an old boar might go? Hell no. But we insist that nature knows better and nature's fine, but hunters shouldn't go out and hunt because it's cruel. It just does my head in, man.
Well, it's that whole thing that people are just so disconnected now that they don't view us as part of nature, which is so ridiculous. It's the complete opposite. And I've been thinking about a slogan, and there's probably far better people than me out there who are a bit more creative. But something that, like, I don't know, trust the science is there, trust nature. Like, why are we constantly going against nature by removing ourselves from nature and saying that it's not going to think? And I know the argument out there is that we have an impact on the landscape, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we do, because we're a part of nature. Everything has an impact on the landscape.
Yep.
You let numbers of any species get out of control, they have an impact on the landscape. The funny thing I love when they talk about Yellowstone National Park is the reintroduction of different animals and how that had an impact and shaped the river system. And you look at all these different things and go, okay, everything has an impact. But for some reason, it's just humans that seem to be not wanting other humans to be a part of the nature. It's the weirdest thing.
Yep.
And I just think it's just we've detached ourselves so far from that lifestyle. I'd love if everybody just had to do like a gap year and you got sent out to the country or the bush and you got an appreciation of what ancestors went through, what farmers go through, what is outside your suburban area, because that seems to be such a problem. And I am a massive fan of all those little video clips on social media of people trying to get up next to wild animals and take their little selfies and poses and look at this cute little fella, and they just get demolished. It's one of my favorite things to watch. I know that it sounds a bit like a sadist, but it's just I just sit there and shake my head and giggle that these people, like, are you kidding yourself? Wow. Anyway, so it's one of those things. And look, a shout out to Philip Big. I had him on for a couple of episodes ago. He's the SFFP candidate down there in Tassie, and he uses a hashtag called Solution Hunters. And I like it because it's a play on words, obviously, that, you know, whilst we're hunters, we are a part of that solution for the management of the environment and conservation. And I think we need to get better at promoting that side of it and being an answer. And I think I'd love to see some of our organisations step up, get some of the younger blokes who really have a passion and promote, sponsor scholarships, whatever it might be, to try and get them into that scientific space and really start to make a big difference on the other side of the fence. Because look, a lot of what we do is preaching to the converted and talking to people that have a passion. Like, no one's listening, no vegan, I don't think. Maybe they are. Hello, thank you for listening. No vegan out there is probably searching up a hunting podcast to have a listen to it. And I get that, and I've got no issue with that. So a lot of the people that are coming to have a listen are predominantly people that have some sort of interest or passion regarding hunting. Whilst we do need them to step up and take some action and do whatever they can, and whatever you can do, please do. I constantly say that. That's whatever. It doesn't matter if it's time, money, just being a good person, talking to someone new about it in a good light, whatever. I think it all helps. that is one of those things for me, is that how do we get it so we are now putting some of the pressure and those external pressures onto others or other areas that aren't facing it, like veganism. I don't think they don't face the same things we face from so many different angles, but they probably could if it was really looked at. Yes, you see your articles where they talk about, what it takes to grow and wipe out things, but I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if it's coming from, it's got to come from other places other than just hunters. And this is the one I've been toying with, right? I constantly see it. I take photos of it. I screenshot them. I love them. They make complete sense to me. There's a really good one. You've probably seen it, that I think Mossy Oak put it out, like a then to now. And they've got, elk. In 1941, there was 40,000 elk, and now it's over 1 million. Yep. And they break down different species in regards to that. Great. Love it. But it's coming from someone with a vested interest in hunting, which is not where we need it to come from to hold weight with the wider community. Does that make sense? There's a distrust out there in information already, and people, I think, struggle to work out what's real and what's not real. And you hear it all the time, and it concerns me because it's almost not to go too political, but it's almost who has the power to make the comments. A perfect example for me is at the moment this big electricity issue where they're talking about nuclear being unsafe. And I don't know if you know New South Wales too well, but just outside Sydney at Lucas Heights, there's a nuclear reactor, and it's been there for a bloody long time. Nothing's ever been an issue, but we've got one side of politics saying that's where we want to go, the other side of politics saying it's really unsafe. Well, it's already here, mate. People don't even know this. This is a problem. And that's just an example off the top of my head. We've got so many examples out there. So how do we change that narrative so that the information's not coming from the hunting perspective or a hunting company or a hunting invested body? Because that is almost, people see it and can probably say, oh, there's bias there though. And it goes both ways. Don't get me wrong. Let's be honest, the animal activists do the exact same. So how do we really go, well, how do we get it coming from people that are supposedly more neutral?
Dude, that's a hard one, eh? I mean, like you said, it has to happen in that science space. But then, even then, there's shadows across who funded the research.
Correct.
And why was it funded, and what pressures were they under to conform to supplying answers that people were possibly looking for from the area from which it was funded.
But when you talk about that, though, people don't look that hard into it. The amount of surveys and the amount of data that is out there that people don't unpack, go through, look at sample size, look at how they were conducted, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's like the results show this year 100% more people did this and that than that. Okay, well, so 2 people did it last year, but only 1 person did it the year before. You know what I mean? Like,
and people don't see it. They don't look at it. And hey, look, maybe they don't care. So is it going to, would that even rate? I don't know. And these are, it's all things I like, I love having a discussion about these things and going, what is there? Because I don't think I've got all the answers. And I'm hoping that even just conversations like this, that someone might hear it and have a better idea, or know somebody that could influence somebody having a better idea. I think that's, the more we chat about these things and the more we try and unpack what we can do to promote what we do, the better it's for everybody. Because who knows, that diamond in the rough out there who might be just sitting there, never heard of our podcasts, someone might just flick him one and go, oh, gee, this was a good chat. And then they might have the power or know someone to change things for a positive. So that's I like to think of it in that light.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, there's so many different facets upon which it could come around at it to and from, and trying to tie it all together. It's the hardest part, I think, and formulate that plan to get everyone on board, charging forward at the same goal with evidence that supports what it is, that the messages that you're sending, to then combat what is ultimately an argument that is 99% of the time wholly emotive against what we do, which is the frustrating part, because we look at stuff and we see through the emotive side of the counter argument because we know the reality. Again, the cruelty of nature is all used to play on the heartstrings, the evil hunter, the Bambi syndrome. And when you turn around and you try and combat that with the logic of the cruelty of nature, the emotive argument shuts it down by saying, well, yeah, they don't have a choice. That's all animals know how to do. That's what nature has to do, but you have a choice. And somehow trying to use logic and science and reality almost goes out the window. And then you turn around and you look at, well, again, as I've mentioned a few times, I suppose, you put a dollar figure on something. And for whatever pros or cons come with that, or for whatever different disposition that each individual listening might think about the nature of what is ultimately, a holistically capitalist way of looking at it. If things have a dollar value, people seem to care about them more, be that hunters or non-hunters, and I meant that distinctively different to anti-hunters. That dollar figure, for whatever reason, seems to make a lot more sense to people. When you look at, some of the examples coming out of Africa where hunting has been banned, and the massive dollars that were being paid for safaris over there now don't exist. And ultimately the demise of those populations of animals, the demise of the landscape, poachers coming in, the landscape being over-farmed and farmed with very poor farming practices, and the decimation of the vegetation and the landscape because the dollar went missing. For whatever reason, it seems that being able to place that dollar value makes a massive difference. In our country, with aspects of feral and pest animals, the dollars are about controlling those pests and the damage that those pests cause on our agriculture and our ecosystems. And those dollars are very distinct and very different to the dollars that you might talk about with regards to some of the North American herd conservation programs that are extremely successful. However, they're dollars nonetheless. I don't know.
All right, two things there. You talked about choice, and it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? You've got the choice to hunt them, but they're upset with that choice.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely something that's very confusing, saying nature has to do it. Okay, I appreciate that we can go to the supermarket, but I don't have to. I can do what nature intended us for and be part of the ecosystem like we always were, like how we have progressed and evolved. We seem to push that to the side, which is very interesting. It's very selective. I find a lot of the arguments become very selective when we start to talk about these sort of things. And then I completely agree about that monetary value, and I think that's an area that we could do so much better. And I really feel that's where we need to really lobby the political parties to value add, because it's great that we talk about, here in New South Wales, that combined fishing and hunting is like the second biggest economic contributor. However, what is that achieving? What is the selling point a politician can use that for?
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, that's just money going into the economy.
Yep.
But it's not this wrapped up in a bow present that they can spruik.
Yep.
Imagine we were able to say 10% of money from hunting, ammunition, rifles, you name it, all is going towards maintenance of these areas. And the general public could see some tangible, great facilities, access, reserves, whatever.
Yep.
Rather than just going, money went into the economy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where did it go? What did it do? What were the benefits of that money in the economy?
Mm.
And I think that is I think that's an area where we could get so much better. It's an area that helps marketing, and that is something to be really looked at from that side of it, because money talks. At the end of the day,
Yep.
money talks. And hey, the money's there, but what's it doing? There's no physical look at what we've done with this money from hunting. And that's where America has got it right.
Yeah.
That is where they do a brilliant job of doing it. And it's, I think, smart marketing on their part of how they promote it and how they say, this is what's happened because of hunting directly. But they've got a system set up to do it.
Yeah.
With is it Pittman-Robertson tax? I think it is, off the top of my head, or whatever it's called. That's the system. We haven't got that system in place. It's something that I'd love to see it happen. That I feel would be a game changer, in my opinion. I think that would really just give some oomph to the argument from our side.
I think we've got, a similar. You look at the hog deer ballots and the knowledge that the money that you pay for your entry into the ballot goes straight back into the programs that they run. It's not a tax per se, but it is probably the only kind of similar example, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard when you flip it around to the fact that, what we do hunt here and what we can hunt here are feral species and introduced species anyway. And the public's perception. But then again, you try and step back and understand, well, what's snowballing the disconnect. And I think a lot of the time, not a lot of the time, but I think that with each generation post, say people born in the 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, or that sort of older time era where living off the land and, shooting rabbits down the paddock at the end of the street and selling them to your neighbours as you walked home. For each generation that comes post that, the gap between the understanding of where our food comes from and the connection with the land and the connection with nature is just bigger and bigger. And that disconnect caused by going to Woolies and buying meat, if I buy meat at all, but buying meat wrapped in plastic and milk in a carton, it exacerbates that disconnect with each generation that comes along. And if people don't have that understanding, then they can't even care about the dollar value that is put on those, or the dollar value that might quantified that could be collected to put back into assisting the control of these feral introduced species that cause untold damage to the very agriculture that's supplying their meat in plastic and their milk in cartons.
I always love the argument about kangaroos and that they're native, we shouldn't hunt them, blah, blah, blah. And I sit there and go, well, one minute you say people have changed the landscape, which is why kangaroo numbers are in plague proportions in certain areas. Mm-hmm. But then you don't want humans to do anything about it.
Yeah, you'd rather them overpopulate and cause each other to starve to death.
And it's something that fascinates me in how people can have that viewpoint and approach it, because you can't say that we haven't impacted species in ways that have promoted their population, but you don't want us to do anything about it either. And that there's these separate rules for natives and ferals.
Yep.
When there should just be an approach to go, that number needs to be kept in check here.
Yep.
And I liked what you said about the hog deer ballot. You're right I think it's a great initiative. That's why I support it. It's on now. If you haven't got your entry, do it. $25. Fantastic. Let's hope they do fix the drawing system this year. But other than that, I'm a massive fan of what they do and how they do it all.
Yep.
It's great. We need that on a bigger scale. And I appreciate what you said about that use that to fund programs and look after the environment and the population and all those things, monitoring, and that's all great. But again, for the non-hunter, they probably don't care about that.
That's right.
So whilst that's a great example, we also need to get a bigger example where the general public benefits as well. That's the key. We need those numbers from that general public, not to be all hunters, just to be supportive of hunters rather than, or even tolerant of hunters, to be honest.
100%.
Doesn't really matter as long as they're not against hunting.
Just let me do me, legally, ethically, and humanely.
Mate, you know what? I think that's a great way to wrap it up.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there first. It just popped into mind. You said you need a better example. What person who's, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 30 years or older, I might make it a bit, 35 years or older, in this country doesn't know something about the rabbit plague and myxomatosis and calicivirus. And now that's not an example of hunters, but it is an example of a catastrophic impact caused by man bringing in something that shouldn't be here and science coming up with an answer. Now, we turn around and throw cane toads into it and say that's the worst example ever and blah, blah, blah. But the example of myxomatosis and calicivirus being extremely effective in helping reduce the impact of those of rabbits, and an example that is out there to say this happened, we caused it, but then we're also able to control it. Now, horrible way to die, horrific. I don't know if you've ever seen rabbits, suffering from those two viruses, but there is a massive example there that pretty much everybody of middle-aged to older generations have a pretty good knowledge of.
Yeah, look, I think that's where the future will be, to be honest. I really believe our biggest concern or issue, as much as I hate poison, I don't think it's going to be poison personally. I think it's going to be gene editing, where they will just make a virus that gets into the population and makes them sterile. And that will be the way that they just wipe all that target species off the landscape. I've read a few things about it. I don't think it's as far as people think away.
Well, the CRISPR technology is pretty amazing.
Correct. So I've even seen estimates of like 10 years' time that this could happen. Now, it won't happen overnight, but, for me, I sit there and go, that is a concern that could be in 20 years' time. The feral animals might not even be on the landscape, period. And then what happens to hunting? So there's plenty out there that could happen. And I sometimes sit there and go, should I be getting out as much as possible? Because I don't know how long I've got this for. It's a crazy thing. You just got to, at the end of the day, as I say to people, just you do you, be proactive, I love what you say. I just say legal because I'm all about that. But ethical and, humane is a very big part of what we do too. So I do like the way you say that. But yeah, just get out there, paint hunting in a good light.
Absolutely.
And I know you do that. I know you do that in your podcast. I know that you do that in your everyday life and whatnot too. So, mate, appreciate you coming on the podcast. Guys, if you haven't, get over and check out Luke's podcast, Hunting Republic. Go and check his stuff out, Brackenware. Yeah, support. I love supporting Aussie where you can. So if you can, do it. So, mate, appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. It's been a great chat as always. I love chatting to you because we tend to delve into some deep topics and whatnot, which is fantastic.
Well, mate, we're like-minded. You're still engaged in the profession. I've finished my 12-step program and I've moved on from that. So. Yeah, like-minded and even as far as our education and occupation is concerned. So no, I same thing, mate. Really appreciate talking to you, and love listening to your stuff too, and the guests you have on too. And you're doing great work in this space. Keep pushing it out there, and hopefully we can keep doing it for a long time, as long as we post that positive message and encourage others into it and portray it all in the right light. At least we can hold our heads up and say, we're doing what we can for the sport, as I've always tried to do, and just keep doing that. And know within ourselves that we're fighting the fight and trying to basically stand up and say, yeah, just let me do me and you do you, and do it humanely, ethically, and legally, and we should all get along nicely. But
Mate, love it. You do you, and keep doing what you do, Luke. Appreciate it, mate. So thanks for coming on. Listeners, hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.
Thanks, mate.
If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.